We start with Fabienne Hoelzel. Fabienne Hoelzel is a professor of architecture and urban design at the Stuttgart State Academy of Fine Arts and the funding director of Fabulous Urban, a design, research and planning practice for less developed regions. She was born in Switzerland and grew up in Aarau, a very small town. As Christina Bode, I got all her notes, and she also said, in the idyllic Milchgasse could be like the address of a protagonist in children's book. So much for her notes. She studied architecture at the ETH Zurich from 1999 to 2005 and worked for Herzog and de Meuron until 2007. In 2008, she started to do research at the Institute for Städtebau at the ETH Zurich and became assistant curator for the contribution to the Architecture Biennale in Rotterdam, Open City Designing Coexistence. From 2010 to 2012, Fabienne Hoelzel was working for one of Latin America's largest slum upgrading programs as the head of the urban design and planning team at the Social Housing and Urban Development Authority of Sao Paulo, Brazil. This project was awarded the UN Habitat Score of Honor for its pioneering work in 2012. From 2008 to 10, and from 2013 to 2017, Fabienne held a research and teaching position at the Institute of Urban Design at the ETH Zurich. The latter post also saw her as academic co-project manager of 2017 Schindler Global Award and the co-editor of the accompanying publication with the same title. Just recently, Fabienne Hoelzel became professor at urban design at the State Academy of Art and Design in Stuttgart. She founded Fabulous Urban in 2013. This design, research and planning practice for marginalized regions is currently engaged in slum upgrading projects in Lagos based on the empowerment of the local actors and inhabitants. Lagos, with almost 20 million inhabitants, is Africa's largest city and one of the world's most rapidly growing cities. Right now, Fabulous Urban focuses on Makoko, a partly floating community in the lagoon of the Lagos coast. The Makoko regeneration plan is on the agenda of Fabulous Urban right now, and the recent implementation of the pilot Makoko Neighborhood Hotspot, a multi-purpose community center. Commissioned by the Heinrich Böll Foundation in Nigeria, Fabienne coordinated and published the research Urban Planning Process in Lagos in collaboration with local researchers and urban planning students of the University of Lagos. Their design and planning approach is comprehensive, strictly community-based, and follows concepts that cover all scales, including strategic planning as well as detailed construction design, involving local actors and networks. So it's the participation process organized and realized under circumstances which are at first sight completely different to the strategies Susanne Hoffmann and the Baupiloten apply. We are very much looking forward to your lecture.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm impressed. This was the most comprehensive introduction ever. I think you said it all. So this is the title of my lecture, obviously, and I was asked to talk about participation, but I don't like the word, and I don't think the term, and I think I don't do participation, because I'm working mostly in regions that are like super fastly urbanizing and where informalization is, of course, a significant factor of that urbanization process. Hence, the question is like opposite top-down what we have here. The question is rather how can planners participate in the city at all, or in city planning, or in city development. So this is what I said. I don't like the word participation, and I don't think I do participatory work, and also I hate these sort of bottom-up, top-down sort of things. So what we do are collaborative strategies. That's what I'm interested in. And I would quickly walk you through some projects we're currently doing in Lagos. And as was said before in the introduction, I lived some time in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Here's the map. I think there's no pointer, but I think you find yourself where Sao Paulo is and Lagos, both two of the largest cities in the world. And in Sao Paulo, I was working, as was said already, with slums. I was employed by the city of Sao Paulo as an urban designer in the official slum upgrading program, which is on the political agenda. I think it's quite an extraordinary program, stopped in the meantime, but still I think interesting to look at. And these are a bit the narratives when people talk about slums, or they call it informal settlements, that you have the challenge of slums, which was the first publication by the United Nations, by UN Habitat 2003, for the first time really trying to frame what are we talking about in this challenge of urbanization, of informalization within the urbanization. Then you have this very dark narrative, which I think Mike Davies is still an important book as an example, like this very dark narrative of the planet of slums. And then you have, of course, the other narrative, which is the total opposite, saying, okay, these are arrival cities, these are cities of hope, so towns of hope, where people go, and they're coming, for instance, in this rural urban migration, they come to these slums where they start a new life and where the kids of these people will have a better life. So the truth, like always, is between these two extremes, but just to quickly frame. However, this is an image of Makoko, one of the communities I'm working since 5 years now. These people live without any infrastructure, but there is life, and this is what we also tell the government. It's not that there is no life, it's happening right now. Makoko, in the back, you see the third mainland bridge, the largest, longest bridge still in Africa. And this is just the scales I wanted to show you. So life is happening, and it's not that everything is dark and precarious, but it has a significant relevance for the city as it goes into the territory, as you can see here, just as an example. So quickly on Sao Paulo, that is, as I said already, one of the largest cities in the world, and like one has to say, most of Latin American cities, it's significant inequality. What you can see here, the dark purple shade means where the opportunities are, where the jobs are, where you can make money. And then you see all these dots. I'm not going to dive into the meaning of yellow, orange, and red, but these are what we call in Brazil favelas. So you see it's quite clear. So in the city center, this is where you make the money and where the, let's say, the happy, lucky few live, and in the outskirts, there you have the poor people, no opportunities, no infrastructure, and this is what you do if you do slum upgrading, which is a funny term, but this is how it's really called. This is Paraisópolis, just as an example, what we call a high-risk zone. If we do slum upgrading, then we do this. We resettle the people living in such high-risk zones. We try to keep what is able to keep. It's not a, let's say, very beautiful, or also in terms of urban design, very interesting solution, but what we try to do is to recognize what people built with their own hands. So you try with some sort of concrete reinforcement to stabilize the hill and the houses. You bring in, as you can see, the drainage pipes in, you bring in the infrastructure they don't have. So you basically bring what they don't have and you keep what they have, or you try to improve what they have, but maybe not in a very good condition. As you can see, slums are always where they are not supposed to be, where people are not supposed to settle. So there are always connection problems. Again, I don't think this is a good urban design or something like that, but it's just to show you that it is something of really sampling things together, recognizing what is there, bringing in what is missing, and sort of trying to link it. On the public spaces, you immediately have to program. I also do not think that this is a very good program or a very good design, but if you do not program it, people come back overnight. So the dynamics are fantastic in these settlements, but it's very fast. And I think this is a very beautiful image, and it says all about the work we do. You see this truck, it's too big, it's too heavy. It's also sort of old school because it's like the machines we use in construction. And then you see these houses, you see this narrow alley, you cannot dig deep because the houses would collapse. So it's a very delicate operation in terms of construction because you have to link each of these houses to the sewer, to the main sewer, but the house already exists, the machine hardly gets in, and you have to talk to each of these residents, to each of these families, whether they agree, whether they want to participate in this project, whether they agree to that. So it's very time-consuming, it's very collaborative. It's not participatory, it's collaborative because you really have to engage people on all levels. And this could be a result which again raises other difficulties. It's all concrete, as you can see. Brazil is a tropical country, drainage, etc. So, and this is the part of the work I was doing, classical urban design. I'm not going to go into that. But what I brought from Brazil, and this is actually what I want to get at, is that even though the program is super pioneering and super interesting, and 4% of the municipal budget tax money was used for the program, it would only cover 30%. It would cover 30% of the people. So you see, like even in an environment like Sao Paulo, where there is political will, and you say, hey, yes, we want to do this, we want to upgrade it, we recognize it as a reality of the city and of society. I mean, how do you want ever, with 4% of the money, upgrade 30% of the city? And this is where we changed in the very last few months with my team. I have my own team. We completely changed the approach away from housing, away from infrastructure, and we went into what I called in those days spatial economy. So I tried to understand how the economic mechanisms are, how we can actually create opportunities for people to make money, to run businesses on all the levels, use investments that would anyway come into the country, like the Copa do Mundo, the World Cup, Olympic Games, and how you can use this major investment and connect it with these very small, many initiatives that are already existing. So this was sort of the starting point, and then I would go to Lagos. This was through the GIZ, Heinrich Böll Foundation. You're always in these conferences, so you meet people invite you. So people said, why don't you come to Lagos? You have a lot of problems and you have experience and you have some ideas. And this is how it started, basically. To cut a long story short, this is Lagos. It's, to give you an idea of Lagos, it's one of the largest cities in the world with one of the smallest infrastructures in the world compared. So already in the 80s, Lagos had an infrastructure that was already not enough. Now, Lagos was exploding. Nigeria is one of the fastest urbanizing countries, like many others in sub-Saharan Africa. So infrastructure is just, yeah, all right, okay, I'm going a bit faster. So African cities are fantastic because it's totally different from the notion of a city you might have as a European, and you probably have because you are European. It's that sort of village-like lifestyle that would just continue on an enormous scale, which is really, I think, a big potential. So I'm just going through these images. Then you have, of course, colonial style, but you also have massive Chinese investment coming into the city. Skyscrapers are coming up, so the city is also changing quite fast. The inequality level is high, but this is actually the reality of Lagos. So 70%, which is a rather conservative estimation, are so-called slums, meaning there's no infrastructure really. No one, and as an urban designer, as an urban planner, this is sort of the worst condition you can work in. You really don't know how many people live in the city. So that's sort of a very, let's say, unfortunate condition to start working because you don't know for whom you actually plan. So we don't know how many come into the city, we don't know how many are really born in the city, but right now we have in Nigeria 170 million inhabitants. We have a birth rate of 5 per woman, so it's going up. So it's the opposite of Germany, where you have this sort of few young people and old people like on the top of Nigeria and many other African countries. It's the opposite, which I think is fantastic, but you need the jobs, of course, and so on. Okay, so 20 million we have right now. It's an estimation. No one really knows. As I said, estimations are between 17 and 23. So government is saying 23 for political reasons, as you can imagine. So it's saying there is pressure. We have to do something about the slums. We have to get rid of them. Others are saying it's less. I think it's around 15 or something like that. However, 17 in informal settlements, and this is what we do actually. This is the work we do. To summarize in a nutshell, I could then also stop my input here. We just support the poor in their fight for their own rights. So I understand my work, architecture and urban design, as a mean to achieve something else, basically. And this is just a selection of the work we are doing. I would show you the Makoko neighborhood hotspot. That is more of a concept than a building, even though it's also a building. It's part of the regeneration plan. Then we do a lot of other infrastructure hubs in other slum communities. And currently we were asked to do a primary school in Ikorodu, even though schools are not really, I think, something that interests me a lot. I'm more into this infrastructure sort of thing, but we started to work on it. So the hotspot is quite, it's a good example for the work we do. It's a tiny project, but it takes forever. It takes 5 years. It was funded by the Embassy of Switzerland to Nigeria, and the current phase, the biogas we're doing biogas-linked toilets now at the hotspot. It's funded by the German Consulate of Germany, and they're super excited about the project. They say for them it's a prestige project because it's going to be the first biogas plant in Lagos, even though, as I said, it's very tiny. And then, of course, a lot of private donations, crowdfunding, people who know our work. And this is why I was saying in the beginning about this micro, meso, and macro level that I sort of brought from Sao Paulo. This is the idea I have about the work, because we have so little money, and in an environment like Lagos that is so huge, and sort of it works, but it's also sort of out of control, even though I don't like that word neither, but you have to find your sort of intervention spot, and even if it's tiny, if it's strategic enough, and that's what I believe, you can change a lot. And that's basically the concept we are working in. This is also why here, economic opportunities again. This is how we sold this project to get the funds. The hotspot is in the sort of the middle of the community. The land was chosen by the community, so we had the project, we had the money, and then I said, hey guys, we can start, so you choose the land. It took another 8 months because you have a lot of ballets, and they are competing, and then there is rivalry, and there's jealousy. So these sort of very simple operations sometimes take really a long time. Makoko is located really in a very good location in the city, so it's a prominent location. That's one of the reasons why government wants to take it down, and they still want to take it down. You see the hotspot in the back, where this guy is looking at with this. The roof, this sort of butterfly roof, became an icon now, so everybody knows this is the hotspot, but it's a very pragmatic decision because I wanted to collect the rainwater, the stormwater, within the building and not outside. This is why we had this butterfly roof. So you see the architectural idea of the building, this public sort of ground floor, the more private upper floor. Then, of course, it's elevated because you have floods. Lagos is 0 meters above sea level. And here also you see how it's sort of located in the community. And what is very beautiful to see that around the hotspot, this is an older image, this is sort of a gentrification process going on, because there are more constructions coming up and very beautiful buildings. So every time I go back, usually every 6 to 8 weeks, there's a new building, it's stronger, and it's fantastic how this sort of encourages people to sort of believe, and this is why we do this, that Makoko could stay in the end, even though, as I said, it's still the danger that the government would take it down. So here in the front you see the biogas plant, which we're currently implementing. I'm not going to go here into the details. However, we do with the feces of the toilets, we produce biogas. We use also fish guts because Makoko is a fishing community. And then we gain the gas for cooking. So the women would use biogas for cooking and not anymore the firewood, which is of course for your lungs, and it's always the women, they're pregnant and hear kids, and they're surrounded by kids. So it's really for the quality of life, for the family, for the women. We believe, and that's why we're doing it, it's better to cook with biogas, and they are very interested. That's that here you see my two ladies here in the back. They are working. My office, by the way, is in Lagos. I since 12 months I'm developing the projects entirely in Lagos. I do not do this anymore here in Europe. So you see the two ladies in the back. They are explaining to this crowd of a bunch of Vales, of these tribal leaders. They are really important people in the community, and here they explain how the biogas process is working. Here you see the construction works currently going on. We have the opening of this third phase in 3 weeks. So you see here the foundation. We always work, of course, with the Makoko artisans, and you see the tanks. And this is actually, for me, more important is this certificate of registration of the cooperative. So when we did the hotspot, we did at the same time a cooperative that was registered with Lagos State government, so people would undergo a training, they got a certificate, they do now courses in accounting, so they know how to run a business, and so on and so forth, and here you see some of the meetings. I could also stop here because I think I'm sort of running out of time. However, what I said before with the micro and meso and macro, this is really important to me because I'm an urban designer, so I rather believe in frameworks and in the force of single actions. But since we can only do single actions because of money and a dramatic lack of political will, we always try to have strategic projects within these frameworks, and that's the framework that was initiated with the Makoko communities, with SERAC, again, a human rights organization based in Lagos, and again, the Heinrich Böll Stiftung in Nigeria. The project was also listed as a finalist for the Fuller Challenge, and the government is looking at this plan now for 3 years, and they're saying they would consider it. It's difficult. Government is very difficult, but we try to, we do not really work with them because of corruptions and many other things, but we always keep them involved. We invite them, we also invite them to the opening. And that's the way we contributed to this plan. The regeneration plan was a classical planning document, like 60 pages, as you do urban planning, with a lot of material, like really planners would use it and read it. And we, when I say we, I mean now Fabulous Urban, my own firm, we contributed with the Makoko Urban Design Toolbox, so with different tools you could feed into this plan, and the hotspot was one of these tools. I think it's yeah, okay, good.